Thanks for watching this Coastline Church video. If you would like to get further connected, you can email us at hello@coastlinensb.com or visit us at facebook.com/coastlinensb.
If this is your first time here, I want to let you know my name is Brian Nichols, and I'm the pastor here at Coastline Church. I'm so very thankful that you came and decided to hang out with us here today. I'm excited because we're continuing a series that we started last week. The series is called Unstoppable. And this past week, we talked about that sometimes in life, we are faced with situations. We're faced with the storms of life that spring up, that come up, that kind of stop us. But the truth is that we serve a God that is like all powerful, all knowing. He's got all the power that he needs to get us through whatever we're getting through. And so for me, I want to make sure that whenever I'm coming up against these things, these walls, these barriers that stop me in life, I want to make sure I can get through it the way that God has already figured out. And so I'm really excited to continuing on into it this weekend as we're in part 2 of the series called Unstoppable. And so I know that, just because we're Christians, it doesn't mean that like life gets easy, right? I mean, being a Christian, like historically, that's not even shown in the Bible or in history or anything like that. Because you're a follower of Christ, it doesn't mean like you got to get out of jail free card or anything like that. And sometimes it means that life even kind of gets a little bit harder. But I want to make sure that I think that even the fact that we are sons and daughters of the Most High God, that there's something that we can tap into that helps us get through that. And so I just want to take a real quick second, and we're going to pray, and then we're going to jump right into this. So let's go ahead and pray. Bow your heads. God, I thank you so much for the word that you have given me today. I pray that you would continue to use me, that your Holy Spirit would just work through me as a conduit to speak to your people. God, I pray that as we look into the Word, as we look into this message and what you've given me, God, I pray that you would just challenge us to grow. God, as your children, I pray that we wouldn't stay in the same place, but we would continue to push forward. Thank you for everything that you're doing. In your name we pray. Everybody said, amen. So, part of the season changing here in Central Florida, there's also like this big spur thing that happens, this rush, this influx of weddings, right? How many of you guys in the past like couple months have been invited to a wedding? You've heard of a couple people getting married. Some people planned a wedding. Yeah, I've been, in the past couple weeks, I've been to 3 weddings in 3 weeks, in as many weeks. And so it is full-blown wedding season. And I love wedding season. I love the wedding season because it's this idea of a story of adventure taking place. It's like the beginning, right? I went to a wedding this past week that I was officiating, and as I'm sitting there and listening to the bride and the groom, they look absolutely beautiful. They're making vows to one another. I look to my right, and here is the cutest little flower girl. She's like 3 years old, and she's just like, she got out of her position in line, and she's like peering around the groom, or around the bride to try to see what's going on. And as she finally gets like the point in which she can have a view of it, like she just cracked this huge grin. And as soon as she smiled, like my heart sank. Because like I'm as the softie that I am, I immediately saw my daughter Olivia in that position, and then thought, oh my gosh, at some point that's not going to be Olivia. This is going to be Olivia, and I'm going to have to like give her away in marriage. And my heart broke, but then like I started worrying because I'm like, dude, I got to start saving now, right? I mean, that's not a cheap thing. But I love being a part of these things because you see stories starting to take place, this sense of adventure that's morphing together. And the truth is, we all have a story. Like all of us, we've the couple things that we share in life are we all have a beginning, right? We're all here, have been birthed before, right? We came into this world. That was our beginning. We all share that the same way. I don't know if anybody here was grown in a petri dish or anything like that. The second thing that we all share is we're going to go out the same way, right? We are going to, at some point, we were birthed, and there's going to be a time in which we all return to dust. And so we're all going to share in that. But the in-between, the things that happen from the beginning to the end, on all of us, they're probably a little bit different, right? But I know this. I know that from beginning to the end, that our lives are almost like chapters in a story, right? There's this kind of influx of like new things happen and then things end. We start new jobs and then we end new jobs, right? And so I'm thinking in my life of like what are some of these big chapters that have happened in my life? And maybe you can relate to these as well. Big defining moments that have happened in your life, in your story, in the story that God is writing through you. For me, I know there was a big start of a chapter in my story when I met Erica. When I met her, she was the woman I was going to spend. Yeah, that's us. That's how... we met each other probably 8 years ago or so, and we've been best friends ever since. And there's something about like finding the person like that like accepts you for being just stupid you, right? I mean, yeah. So yeah, if anybody can love that, then that's who I wanna be around, right? But that was a big chapter in my life of getting to know Erica and her becoming my best friend and us dating. There was another start to a chapter of when I asked her to marry me. And we went to Disney World, and I remember walking around all day long, and this ring was burning a hole in my pocket. And I waited to the end of the day, and finally God made this amazing moment where we were out on this dock, and I said, baby, I love you. And I want to be the one to provide for you and protect you and love you forever. And will you please, just deal with me for the next umpteen years? And she said yes. I don't know what she was thinking, but so that was a big deal in our lives. The day we got married was another big chapter in my life. We went and we got before our family and our friends, and we said vows to each other that we hold to this day. We say, for richer or poorer or mostly poorer, we're going to love each other forever. And that's we're sticking to it. So that was a big chapter in our life. There was another big chapter, and when we had kids, we found out that we were pregnant with Olivia, and having a daughter first, that will break. I'll tell you what, there's not a whole lot of more life change that'll happen than when you have a baby girl. Like if you're I'm a 300-pound dude. I'm like part redneck, part tech guy or whatever, and you have a little baby girl and you just melt. You become the softest guy in the whole world. And so we had, for that chapter of my life, we had Olivia, and then we found out we were having another little nugget, and Benjamin, and he came into this world, and that was a huge part of my life. It was a really big deal. I love the fact that these chapters continue to be told in my life. And then you have chapters in your life of like you stepping out and doing big things that you've never done before, getting into new jobs or something like that, or changes in life and starting from scratch. And we all experience these big changes, these different chapters in our life. I remember that a big one for Eric and I was also buying a house together. It was these chapters in life, and they kind of ebb and flow with all of our lives. And many of you have these same type of experiences. Your chapters might be titled something different. Your chapters might be, highlighted by something different or whatever. It might be college, or it might be your dream job, or whatever. But we all share in the same thing that God is continually writing a story in us. The crazy thing, though, is it happens so fast. I remember a couple nights ago or last night, I've been looking through some of these pictures that are in my sermon notes, and I'm like, dude, that feels like it was yesterday. And I love that, on Facebook, you can look at the date of when memories happen, and it's 10 years ago. And I'm like, man, it just feels like it was yesterday. Life happens so fast, especially when life is going good. When you're having fun, it's the Bible talks about that this life is but a vapor. And I believe it, especially just seeing in my own past. But there's times in life where although we feel like sometimes it's going fast, we get into some chapters of life where it just slows down, where everything just where life starts coming at you. And it's like no matter what you want to do is get to the next chapter. You want to get through the hardship that you're going through, but it's tough. It doesn't happen. It seems almost like life gets slower and slower, and life just keeps piling on you and piling on you. It's things like you struggling with your spouse. Like, it doesn't seem like it goes by fast. It seems like you just keep trudging through it. It's things like you dealing with, dead ends when it comes to finances, where every month you go and you look and you're like, man, I owe more than what I get paid. How do I deal with that? Spiritually, people have, you go through these dead ends, these storms, these struggles spiritually, where you're like, man, I remember last year when I would pray, like I would feel God's presence and like it would just, everything would be great. And now like I pray and I'm like, God, what is going on? How do I get through this? Some of you, it's because you've experienced emotional trauma in your life. There's been hurt, there's been pain, there's something that's happened to you, and because of it, life like just has you stuck in this chapter, in this storm of life. It could be a loss of a relationship, it could be loss of a job. The question I want to ask today is why? Like, why do we have to go through that? Like, literally, like we talked earlier, like I believe that God is, all powerful. He's all knowing. He can literally do anything. And if like I'm his son and you're his sons and daughters, like we should be able to tap into that. And so like, why do we, as his sons and daughters, why do we have to really deal with these tough chapters of our life? Why do we have to be stopped by these storms that we're going through? If God is unstoppable, which I know he is, there must be a way for him to work through us and allow us to push through this storm in life. This past week I was doing some studying and I came across the story of a man in the Bible by the name of Elijah. And Elijah was someone who was very in tune with God. He was actually one of the guys that was most in tune with God in his time. He lived some time after Moses and Joshua and the Exodus out of the Israelites out of Egypt. And his job, his main gig, was that he would relay the messages of what God was saying to the Israelite people. The Israelite people were God's chosen people. There was something about the Israelites that God just really loved. And come to find out later on down the way, the Israelites would actually be the ancestors of a man that we would know to become Jesus. And so the Israelites, you can see, man, if you want to talk about a cool story, if you want to read some cool stories and talk about different chapters in life, if you start to look at the story of the Israelites, man, it's like incredibly... It's amazing because time after time you see these people who are struggling through hardship or whatever, and they've got to go into war, and they're vastly outnumbered, and they go into battle, and literally like they don't even have to pull out their swords. Like God just causes confusion amongst their enemy, and they all die. Like I've been in fights before. I remember like being in middle school, like getting in a fight, and this kid like punched me in the face, and I didn't like it, and so I lost the fight because I walked away. But like imagine like if you like don't have to like any fight in life, like whatever you're dealing with, like wouldn't it be great if like you don't even have to put up a fight? Like God just takes care of it. That's kind of what was happening with the Israelites. There was times where they were hungry and like literally food would drop down from the sky. How cool would it be like you're working out in the yard and like, dude, I'm hungry. Chick-fil-A chicken biscuits just fall down everywhere. Like that would be, that's what I want to see, God. You talk about a cool story, right? Christian chicken, give it to me. But time after time with the Israelites, you see God really showing off that he is the unstoppable God. And that no matter what came against the Israelites, like there was nothing physically on this earth that was going to keep them from where God had planned and destined them to be. And so as I was reading, as I was studying about Elijah, I was puzzled about this next part that I heard, because I knew that the Israelites were God's chosen people. I've heard all these stories of how he had shown up and got them through tough situations and how they were literally unstoppable in pursuing God's will in their life. And so I was reading this passage, and it kind of struck me weird. In 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 1, it says this. It says, "Now Elisha the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead," or Gilead, I don't know. Gosh, Edgewater, said to Ahab, that would have been more, I guess, like Oak Hill. So anyways, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will neither be dew nor rain in the next few years except at my word." Elijah, the man of God, the guy that literally is the messenger for God to the Israelites, tells them, it's not going to rain. You're not even going to have dew on the ground. It's done. And what happened next over the course of the next couple of years was a drought. Now, I don't know if in my time I've ever experienced a drought, a time where there's like no rain. But if you want to think about in those times, like a drought was like literally everything stopped. Like if the rain doesn't come down, that means the grass doesn't grow, the crops don't grow. So that means the farmers are out of their job, right? Because the grass doesn't grow and because the crops don't grow, that means that the livestock don't get anything to eat. So livestock don't have anything to eat. You know, it's really tough to make burgers out of livestock that are dying. And so the servants don't eat, and if the servants don't eat, the king doesn't eat. Literally, it's like a season of complete stoppage. The only thing that I can relate it to, and I don't even think it does it justice, is I remember a few years back at a time where the housing market collapsed and we went into a recession. And I know it was really tough for a lot of people. Life got extremely tough. But it did affect maybe a smaller portion. In this case, a drought would have been catastrophic to the land. And so imagine if tomorrow, all of a sudden, like you don't have a job to go to. Nobody has a job to go to. You don't have any more money in your bank account. Like you look at it and it's in the red, and like some of you are like, well, I know what that looks like. It's a normal Monday, man. But and there's no like hope of a job in the future. Like you literally are just at a point where, I don't know what to do. This is the position that the Israelites get put in. Literally, Elijah goes and says, it's not going to rain at all until I say it's going to rain. And this went on for years. The Israelites, God's chosen people, are stopped. They're not going any further. Now here's the thing. You might be going through a situation like this right now. I hope that this helps you get through it. For some of you, like the situation that's going on in your mind, the storm that you've had to deal with, or the thing that stopped you and slowed down time and enabled you to get through a chapter, is something that you maybe have just gotten out of. But maybe you need to know why. Why did I have to go through that? Why did I have to deal with that? For other people, you might be getting ready to go into a storm or a life situation that's extremely tough. And I think you need to know this because it's going to help prepare you for what is ahead. And so in 1 Kings chapter 18, verse 1, it says this. It says, after a long time, in the 3rd year, the word of the Lord came to Elijah, go and present yourself to Ahab. I will send rain on the land. After at least 3 years of no rain, you talking about a season of stop, 3 years is a long time to be stopped by anything. 3 years is a long time to go through a storm in life, to go through a tough situation like this. Like I remember back in, some of you guys remember back in like school, like elementary school or high school. I know for some of you that's a long way back, right? So Chip Clark, it's all right, man, just go with it. But you remember back to that time, and it seemed like, dude, summertime is 4 months away. Oh my gosh, that's so long. Like you're like miserable in school and you're like, I'm going to be here forever. Everything is just slowed down. And so I know that the Israelites, when they're going through these 3 years, it's not a quick process. It's tough to be in that situation for that long a time. For what you're dealing with or what you have dealt with, I know it wasn't easy. I know it's not easy right now. It's not an easy thing to get through. But in this situation, God goes and says, okay, Elijah, I'm ready to start things back up again. It's weird to me because I'm seeing in this like, okay, wait, so God was the one that caused this to happen to them. Because God says, I'm ready to send some rain. So that means God put them in this situation. God made them go through this struggle, this storm. Like why? As I did some more reading, I found out that Ahab at the time was actually a wicked king. He was not a good king. He had led all his people into a place in which they were actually worshiping these false idols, these things that God said, hey, I don't want you to have anything to do with these things. They were sacrificing to him. They were even training up priests. There was something like 400 priests to the false god of Baal, and they were actively worshiping these false gods. And so at some point, God goes and says, hey, they're going down a road that they can't be going down anymore. They're getting into a situation where foundationally it's going to mess them up in the future. And so I've got to cause something to happen so that they stop. And I started to understand that. I'm like, I get that. Because in life, we just go. And that when things are going good, when we think life is going right, like we don't even think about like, okay, is something messed up? Is something wrong? Am I doing something wrong? Am I doing this the wrong way? And so God literally has to have this time of stoppage, this time of a storm of life coming into the Israelites' land so that they'll stop. And so Elijah comes back to Ahab and he says, I want you to get all 400 of the prophets of Baal and we're going to have this contest. He says, we're going to put a sacrifice down on an altar, and we're going to let all 400 of the prophets of Baal pray over this thing. And when Baal sends down fire from heaven, we'll know that Baal is the true God. And so they did that. They went and they put an offering down. They got all these 400 guys together, and they said that we're wailing, and they're screaming, and they're cutting themselves, because that was the practice in that time. And Elijah's sitting there, he's making fun of them. He's like, well, maybe your God is busy. He says, maybe your God is on the toilet. And so after they're done, Elijah goes and he puts the offering on the altar. And he says, now I want you to dump water all over it. And keep dumping water all over it. And then he prays, and God sends down fire. And immediately, it says the offering was burned up. And it said immediately that Ahab and the Israelites understood where they went wrong. They stopped worshiping the idols. They stopped going down that path. And they said, God, the Lord Almighty, is the one true God. He's who we're going to worship. He is who we are going to serve. It was a foundational issue. I don't think it was punishment. I think sometimes tough things happen in our life and we think that God is punishing us or God is trying to get us back for what we've done wrong. And I don't think that's the type of God, I don't think that's the type of good father that he really is. I think that sometimes, though, he has got to put things in our path that stop us before we get going down the road too far. I went on a little day trip with my mom this past week, and we went over to a church in Claremont and went to a conference. And I didn't realize, like, for all you people that commute down I-4, man, I'm going to start praying for you guys, because that is not of God. That is tough. And so I'm listening to Siri and trying to follow directions. At some point we go and like I make a wrong turn and I'm just like stuck on the highway until like Siri's like, please turn around. Please turn around. I'm like, I'm going to throw you out the window. Literally, we had to get to a point where we have to stop. We have to do a U-turn and get this car pointing in the right direction. I think that sometimes in life, in our storms of life, the tough things that we're going through financially, the tough things that we're going through with our relationships, the tough things that we're going through with our job, with job losses, with these struggles, I think sometimes God is saying, hey, I've got to stop you in this. Because if I don't stop you, you're going to get so far down the road that it's going to really destroy you. It's a foundational issue that God is trying to work out in the Israelites, as well as sometimes I think in us. I've got a really good friend that he builds these big mega homes for a living. And man, when they're done, they're beautiful. They look like, fortresses or whatever. They're all lit up. They look great. But he'll tell you that one of the number one most important things in the process of building a home, the number one most important thing to do is make sure the foundation is poured correctly. He said, because if the foundation isn't right, and you start building all these things on it, you might have the right plans, you might follow the right plans, but at some point, because the foundation is not right, that building's going to start going off in a way it's not supposed to go on. And what's something that could last for tens or hundreds of years isn't going to last that long at all, because it can't stand on the foundation that it's on. And I think sometimes God knows for us, he's got these amazing blueprints of like, man, this could be the life that I have for my son or my daughter. But their foundation, man, they keep going off. I've got to stop them so I can get the foundation right. I can get them to where I want them to be. I think that is exactly what happened with the Israelites, and I think that's what happens with us sometimes in life. Sometimes God has to adjust it. Sometimes the things that we're going through, the things that we're headed to is actually danger, is worse for us. And so God has to say, stop. I've got to change your direction. I've got to get you back on the right path. I've got to fix the foundation that you're on. My wife knew I was preparing this sermon, and as she was listening to a podcast this past week, she texted me this quote. And I'm not even sure what the guy was talking about, but it goes great with what we're talking about today. He said, for what you're going through, God blew it away. It was not to punish you, it was to protect you. God would rather you go through a season of frustration rather than build your life on the wrong foundation. That's so true. I was talking with the worship leader that was up here today, Jerry Webb. Jerry Webb is a third grade science and math teacher. Fifth grade science and math teacher. So almost in the middle school. And he was telling me some of these kids come in his class and they are jacked up. Their math is they're no, I understand it. I know what we're talking about here with fractions and multiplication or whatever. By the way, he said that we would all fail fifth grade math. It's so crazy now. But anyways, he said that sometimes he'll do one-on-one tutoring with them, and he literally has to go through this process. He called it remediation. He says, Brian, I've literally got to tell these kids, I've got to teach them that, hey, what you know, what you think is correct is not. It's not the right way. And he's I've got to almost break it out of them and then say, hey, this is the right way. I've got to insert, this is the correct way to go through this problem. I think sometimes that's exactly what God is doing to us. I'm going to tell you, it's just sometimes. I'm not going to say every time that something bad happens in your life, it's because you're going down the wrong path. I don't think that's the case. But I think sometimes we go and we pray, God, help me get through this. I don't understand why I'm going through this. And the whole time he's dude, I'm trying to keep you from where you're actually headed to. I got to get you on the right path. Sometimes we think, the enemy is just so against me this week. No, you're against yourself. We got to change some things in your life so I can get you to where I've got planned for you to go.